Eurobike is done, out of the way. We've been working hard here in the workshop while everyone else has been getting drunk over in Germany. Been keeping an eye on things, and hopefully now the YouTube feed is freed up with more interesting things. We can start looking at some more closer details. The thing that really caught my eye is the new Look Blade RS. Okay, I'm a Look fan, but Look are one of those companies that the more you zoom into the detail, the more you discover and the more you like it, which is in contrast to most other brands that as you zoom in, you know, the resolution gets tighter, ooh, that's not so nice. So when I saw the Blade RS on the TV, like the Cofidis team have been riding it for a little while now, have to admit, I thought, oh no, this looks a bit dull. You know, it looks like another specialized SL7. Come on, Look, surely you can do better than that. Now it's been released and I've got all the information, and Look have been kind enough to send me loads more information. That detail is what I'm after, and I am really intrigued and interested, and I cannot wait to get my hands on one. We've ordered a few frame sets already just on the basis of what I've looked at, and we're taking pre-orders now. But yeah, this is going to be interesting because they've done some really cool stuff. And now I have to admit, I would love to sit down with their designer, because I think we would really get on, because what they're doing with their geometry and design right now is really progressive, quite risky. Like, look at the Optimum behind me. That is an endurance bike with a slack head angle, you know, tight seat tube angle and a long wheelbase, absolutely ideal for endurance riding, and I love it. Now, that same designer, I think, has taken some pretty cool risks with this Blade RS, and I like where they're going with it. Now, the big headline is that you're going to hear from all the other channels. It's lighter, but there's lighter out there. It's aero, but there's more aero out there. It's expensive, but not as expensive as some, like blah, 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 blah. The interesting stuff is really in the detail. Geometry then, and this is where I think the Look 795 is really going to stand out from all the other bikes out there. Now, just put these 6 bikes into geometry Greek, so kind of put a bit of thought into it, but not loads. I've chosen to compare it to the Trek Madone and the Giant Propel because they're the sort of the famous aero bikes, and they're also mainstream brands, and mainstream brands don't do radical or progressive. They tend to sit back a few seasons and wait for things to evolve. And the geometry on those bikes are basically what you'd expect: 73 degrees, and a little bit lower on the stack height just to help with that aero. But if you've ever seen anyone ride one of these, they normally add a ton of space underneath the handlebars to raise everything back up again. Now, after that, we kind of got the Pinarello Dogma, which is kind of evolving that a little bit. So from a full-on aero bike into probably more of a Grand Tour bike, or what GCN show probably describes as a sportive bike right now. So stiff, racy, aerodynamic, but then just toned down ever so slightly. So we've still got that nice balance of weight and aerodynamics. Specialized Tarmac SL7 done a similar sort of thing, which every bike seems to be copying. And then of course, the NV Miele, which has become like a midlife S-Works SL7. You know, it's got the big price tag, the boring paintwork, and all the relaxed geometry for someone who wants to ride an S-Works SL7 but hasn't quite got the hips for it. So how does the Look Blade RS account for this? You see, I think it's been really clever, because what they've done is make a geometry here that really does help the rider be a part of the improved aerodynamics. You see, you, the rider, is the biggest problem with all of this. You, that big hump of drag sat on top of it. And okay, if you lower your stack height, then, you know, even just lowering your helmet by 1 centimetre is going to reduce your frontal area and help aerodynamics. But a lot of those bikes don't help you address that, especially the NV Miele. So it might be a very aerodynamic bike, but you are sat up. So the Look, what has it done? The radical thing of this is that seat angle. Look at that, 74.5 degree seat angle. That is so steep. That is almost time trial sort of territory seat angles. So your position relative to the bottom bracket is so much closer to the handlebars already. Now with that, you really have opened your hips. Now imagine this is your hips, for instance. This is down here, this is your bum, and this is your femur, this is your back. How you open those hips, if you move everything further forwards by steepening that head angle, you're essentially doing this. Now, How you want to close that angle down again, you could fit longer cranks, that would be pretty silly, and bring your femur further up, or you could reduce your angles here. Now, as long as you have the core strength for that, you're now in a pretty good position. What's going to happen is that most bike fitters are going to look at this and go, oh my God, it's got a really, really long reach, 400 millimeters. But haven't really accounted for the fact that it's a 1.5 degrees steeper seat angle to help that position. And then the stack height is fairly high. So we're going to be able to reduce the amount of spacers underneath the head tube, which is really going to help stiffen up the steering and everything else. But you should be in that more forward position. And then you think, okay, fair enough. So I'll put more of my weight now over the front wheel. Interesting. But if you look at the front center, so this is the distance between the bottom bracket and the front wheel, they've elongated this slightly. So it's fairly long wheelbase. Haven't got the wheelbase stats on here, but just doing some sums puts it at just over 1,000 millimeters. So whereas most of the other bikes on there are just under typical race geometry. So what I'm predicting is this should be very, very stable at high speed. So when you have got it revved up 35, 40, 45 kph, this should feel super stable. And that's the biggest thing when you're riding at speed. It's not can the bike actually do it, is how much confidence do you have as a rider to actually control the bike at that speed. And remember, we're not in pro teams. We've got potholes and trees and cars and street furniture and all that sort of stuff. So when we're going those sort of speeds, we want to feel like we are absolutely in control. And that's what you get with a nice long wheelbase. So this long wheelbase is similar to what gives this Look 765 Optimum its good stability as well. This also has the much slacker head angle. So when you're going down hills and you're hitting rough roads and stuff, this feels super stable, almost like a mountain bike or a gravel bike or something. Whereas on the Blade RS, this is a little bit steeper. They pulled it back into a more classic 73 degrees, but because you've got a little bit more weight over the front wheel, this should be fairly agile handling, especially if you're going to try and throw it into a hairpin or a 90-degree bend. It should keep things pretty sharp because you should have more of your body weight over the front wheel. I like that approach. So stable in a straight line, think dragster as opposed to go-kart. And then agile handling at the front. I think this is not necessarily blending a climbing bike and an aero bike. This is blending a time trial bike with a road bike. And that I think makes much more sense because this really does help you, the rider, get into a more aerodynamic position. It doesn't need to be by much. Even just dropping your helmet by 1 centimeter is going to make a difference. I think Pete talked about this after a whole load of aero testing. I think he came to the conclusion that if I just made sure I kept my head down a little bit lower, then I was going to be aerodynamic. And that's what I think Look have done here. They've actually addressed that. So the other big talking point from Look is their use of 5 different types of carbon fiber. Now, it has to be a blend of what they call a high modulus and high strength. You see, high strength, or in this case, they said HR, high resistance, is something that can really resist that tensile pulling force, but they can be quite elastic as well. Whereas something with high modulus can be very, very stiff, but it'll also be quite brittle as well. So we need that sort of blend in there because to increase stiffness without increasing lots and lots of weight, then we have to go to a higher modulus type of blend. So the fact that we're now using ultra high modulus, and I mean, we've seen Torre, etc., talking about this, is pretty exciting, to be honest. It's really pushing that carbon technology on and seeing how they're blending it now with ultra high resistance fibers as well. So we're starting to really build up a picture now how they blend all this together, and where they put it all is obviously a completely top secret, and we'll never ever get to know that. But it is quite nice to know that I think Look are really on the forefront of this, because this, unlike the Look Optimum behind me, the Blade RS is really all about race performance, and it should be super stiff, absolutely pin sharp. Now, this is a stiff bike. This is mostly probably intermediate modulus. There might be a little bit of high modulus in there. I very much doubt it for the money that we pay. But the Blade RS really should give absolutely pin sharp responsiveness. Now, a few of you are going to ask, how does that differ to Time? I know, because you're big followers of both brands. Time is different. They're using blends of lots of different types of carbon and Dyneema. And Dyneema has that characteristics of being very strong and anti-vibration, which is why Time are able to do this fantastic blend. It's almost like witchcraft of really, really stiff but silky smooth ride feel as well. It still blows my mind. But ultimately they are quite heavy for it. Not massively, but a little bit. But when we're talking absolute ultimate race performance, that's where something like the Blade RS really comes into its own. So a few little details for you. So this is meant to be that ultra stiff, ultra light frame. They're claiming 890 grams for a frame set, 425 grams for a fork. Two-piece carbon aero combo seat post that we've talked about. The whole thing is only disc brakes. There's not a rim brake option in there at all. And it's only really for electronic group sets. They haven't done anything in here to enable a mechanical gear shifting mechanism to run at all. 700 by 32 millimeter tire clearance. I love that. I think most people are probably going to run 30s. Leaves a little bit of time for broken spoke or some debris or something. So that's all pretty good. A new through axle. They're going to the 1.5 millimeter thread pitch, which is good. And a T47 bottom bracket, which is now becoming pretty standard across looks range. So that's all pretty tidy. I think prices are still being finalised for every individual market, and we haven't really got the prices for the UK market just yet. But just to give you a run through the range very, very quickly, the actual range top in the sort of the grey and black glossy with the Campagnolo Super Record EPS and the Carima wheels. I'm not excited by that whatsoever, I have to say, I'm sorry. Then we have the sort of that dark metallic red, like we've seen that Time Chroma red, but with that sort of black stripe across the top. This is going to come in the SRAM red ETAP 2x12 model. That looks pretty tasty. Stepping down a little bit, we have that sort of dark, they call it thunder blue, sort of almost purple colour, again with that weird black stripe. I'm not sure if I like that just yet or not, with a Dura Ace group set. And then we have that Pro Team edition. I think this is where the value is really. They've got the Ultegra Di2, the Pro Team black, that little hint of the Mondrian colours across the top. There's sort of the Carima wheels with a bit more of a standard spoke configuration. So that Ultegra Di2 in the Pro Team black with the Carima wheels is the lowest in the range. After that, I think it's all about the frame sets. I think this is where the bulk of their sales are going to come, because those Carima wheels are great, but they're not sort of that usable if you're all around the world. You can't find a Carima dealer with spokes, blah, blah, blah. Also think, I don't know about you, but I'd rather run a 55, 60 millimeter deep wheel on that sort of thing. And yeah. So these frame sets are really going to open up using SRAM Rival, SRAM Apex even, SRAM Force of the group sets, and even the Shimano 105. So you can really sort of splash out on a really good quality frame set, good set of wheels, and then just get whatever componentry you need to make the thing work. And you're still going to end up with a much better bike. So frame options, we've got that grey. I'm really not liking that grey. Thunder blue, I'm quite liking. It looks good. The Pro Team black I think is going to be their best seller. That chrome satin, and of course they have got this absolutely beautiful, iconic colour in that Mondrian colour scheme. It's so typical of Look. You can't have a top of the range Look race bike and not have that colour scheme, and I think they've absolutely nailed it. That looks superb. Final little notes in, they are going to continue by the looks of it with the old Blade, but not the RS module with the high modulus. I think there's going to be a couple of models of the Blade still floating around. They've also obviously got the new mono Blade, the TT bike, which just looks absolutely rapid. I'm trying to find more information about that, specifically around whether the handlebars can be swapped out or changed. That looks absolutely rapid. It's great to see Look sort of back in that sort of TT market as well. So yeah, I think in all a very, very interesting time. I can't wait to get my hands on one of those, because if they can make a bike as stable as that at high speeds, giving the normal rider the confidence to ride at those sort of speeds, and give the normal rider the ability to get their head down and a little bit more aerodynamic on top of an aerodynamic bike, now that I think is a compelling offer. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that little geek out with me. I'm such a look fan, and I think this is not disappointing from what I've seen so far. If you've got any questions, please get them in the comments. I'll try and gather them all up and answer them when I get a chance to do the full ride review, which hopefully will not be too far away. They're shipping these starting in July, which is just a few weeks away. We've got a couple of frames on order. If you're interested in one, probably worth giving us a call and getting a pre-order in, because I think these are going to get snapped up pretty quickly. That is assuming that the prices are somewhat reasonable. Okay, with all that said, take it easy. See you on the next one.